most of their axe murders try to get away with murder where they really had people killed and dumped in the river. So we're going to read you this book with a murder fantastical. Now, don't you say you can't do it, because you can. I know it. I read it in a book. The chief constable could decide to call in the yard. Isn't that so? Yes, it is, but... Well, there you are then. We're relying on you to get the very best man. There you know for whom to ask. Well, I must say that's a relief. What is? Well, you're having taken full responsibility for the whole affair. Feel altogether easier in my mind. I shall go and tell Thompson that you are now in charge of the situation, and that Scotland Yard will be along any moment. Most good of you, John. I appreciate it. Now, wait a minute, Sir John found to his annoyance that he had raised his voice. Indeed, he was almost shouting. I'm taking responsibility for nothing. Everything must go through the proper channels. Through what? Through the what? Speak up, John. The proper channels. Oh, yes, but of course. That's why I rang you. The proper channels, George. In the case of Sergeant Duckett, the CID at King's Marsh. Until I get the reports, I know nothing about this matter officially. Is that all clear? Of course. I quite understand, John. I'll get on to Duckett right away. No objections to going through the proper channels now. I talked to you and gotten everything settled, but then there wouldn't be a bit any sense in speaking to Duckett before I got things fixed with you, now would there? For the 10th time, George, nothing is fixed. I shall wait for the report of the police and make my decision. Naturally not, just so long as we agree that your decision will be... George, will you kindly ring off and call Sergeant Duckett? Certainly will. Sorry to have kept you chattering. You'll be wanting to contact the yard right away, I imagine. Well, goodbye, John. Thank you very much. Sir John put down the telephone and walked out of the terrace again with the idea of resuming his pipe and his beer, while waiting for the proper channels to catch up with him, but it was no use. Pieces of the evening had been shattered, could be raveled up again. He decided to go upstairs, have a bath, and change into more formal attire to greet the detective inspector from Kingsmarsh. As he lay back in the warm water, Sir John thought about Raymond Mason, who now lay dead less than a mile away at Craigswell Grange. He could not pretend that he had ever liked the fellow. For all his years to play country gentleman, Raymond Mason had never succeeded in fitting into the cozy social structure of Craigswell. He belonged neither with the Adamsons or the Municipals in their sizable country houses, with Dr. Thompson and the Reverend Herbert Dishforth, who both worked hard ministering to the bodily and spiritual needs of the village. Near with the jolly company of the farmers, Tom Rudge and Harry Penfold and the rest. There's no doubt at all when Mason was wished to provide his niche. His over-ambition to belong to the country set, to his irritating way of referring to Adamsons and the Municipals. Of course, it was simply not possible. Sir John, as he frequently remarked, hoped that he was not a snob, it was a vain hope. It's inconceivable that he would establish any real rapport with a man who was not merely in business. The nature of this business was so unfortunate. As a bookmaker, if you please, pleasant fellow his own way, generous but ordinary bookie. Not that class counts for anything in this day and age, of course. Not what you and the fellow dine at Wednesday because of his hopes that it was a snob, but Mason's life before he came to Craigswell, Sir John knew very little. Mason often referred to himself with satisfaction as a self-made man. They were given details about how his interesting exercise do-it-yourself had shape. All that was certain was that he was the founder and proprietor of the firm of Raymond Mason, Turford Collins, whose London office from humble origins east of the city until he had established himself in a proud Mayfair mansion. So successful had the enterprise proved that 4 years ago, Mason, then in his late 40s, had been able to install a general manager and retire full dream of becoming a country squire. True, he went to London a couple of times a week to keep an eye on things, but henceforth Craigbell was to his home and his persona of a thoroughgoing country gentleman. His arrival had been welcomed at first by Major George Mansfield, for he had rescued the Mansfield family from a precarious financial situation, purchasing Craigbell Lodge, the old gatekeeper's cottage belonging to the Grange, together with 2 acres of land. Selling the lodge and just one more stage to the endless battle that George Mansfield had been fighting for years. But to keep his family home intact in the face of inflation, rising price and costs, penal taxation, and inadequate fixed income, Sir John reflected old early days that he had quite a fuss with his stocky, smooth-faced neighbor, introduced him to the village. In fact, the trouble between them was quite recent in origin. Just as the trouble was, Sir John did not know, appeared that the Mason had been conducting a campaign of minor persecution against Mansfield, by which Mansfield complained unendingly to his friend the chief constable. Mason had lodged an objection to Mansfield's private shooting range to the grounds as both noisy and dangerous. Mason had accused Mansfield of closing the ancient way across the grounds of the Grange, right of way which nobody used, to which George Mansfield was quite ignorant. Mason had reported Mansfield to Sergeant Duckett for riding his bicycle 100 yards down the lonely lane at dusk. The statutory lights, Mason had unearthed ancient documents relative to the land, of which the great effort to prove that Mansfield's new Grange was illegal and should be demolished. Mason had, and so it went on. But surely, George, said Sir John, had protested, there must be the same reason for all this. Who's guarded to this fellow? Why are you behaving like this? What have we done to upset him, eh? But to his very sensible question, he never received a satisfactory answer. And now Raymond Mason was dead, and never would his white Mercedes-Benz registration number RM1 naturally scream through Craigbell, terrorizing hens and delighting children. There again would those stubby, well-manicured hands pull out a waffle of fivers in the saloon bar of the Viking Inn, seeking to buy what he could not be bought, an entry to a little groups of contented beer drinkers, to the village society which was so free and easy to those who were born to it, but infinitely expensive and difficult to an outsider. Poor Mason, already the fact of his death had taken root. Sir John's mind, provoking kindlier thoughts than the man had ever evoked while alive. When a few days secured the knowledge that he was gone for good, the whole village be mourning Mason quite genuinely. Meanwhile, there was the disturbing fact that Mason had died a violent death. An accident, presumably, but most unfortunate, which should have taken place at George Craigbell Grange, thus dragging the Mansfield family, all the while Irish talk of George's about calling in Scotland Yard. Surely he was not implying that Mason had been murdered. If so, Sir John put the unpleasant thought out of his head. For the moment, the only thing to get out of his bath, dry himself, and get dressed, and wait for a tickle of information to reach him through the proper channels. And so, in due course, Detective Inspector Robinson from the King's Marsh turned up Craigbell Manor with a worried face and sheaf papers in order to put the facts to the chief constable. These facts could be set out briefly as follows. Raymond Mason had driven over to Craigbell Manor Grange in his white Mercedes about 5:30. He had been seen and spoken to Mrs. Municipal, not seen Major, who was practicing shooting range in the grounds. He had been very friendly and affable, according to Mrs. Municipal, and had brought her some plants for her garden. Shortly before 6:30, he had taken his departure. However, a few yards down the drive of his car, Kelly stopped and he had got out, investigated the trouble. What happened next, somewhat confused. He had evidently become aware of some danger, for he had uttered a cry of alarm. A moment later, a shot rang out. Mason fell dead beside the car. The only eyewitness, apart from whoever fired the shot, was Miss Dora Mansfield, the Major's non-octogenarian aunt. She had followed Mason out of the house, hoping to catch up with him in order to give him some pamphlets on spiritualism. Her evidence seemed not entirely clear, but Mason had apparently run out from behind the car, waving his arms and shouting as if from the alarm. He had fallen dead. Search had revealed a gun, presumably a fatal weapon, lying in the shrubbery beside the wall in the house. It proved to be one of Major Mansfield's service pistols, which is used for his target practice. But no fingerprints had apparently been carefully wiped clean. One bullet had been fired. Inspection of the car revealed that it had been put out of action by the operation of the anti-car theft device which Mason had recently put in. This is the switch hidden under the dashboard, was connected to the gas supply, the idea being they would be able to drive only a few yards until the fuel in the carburetor was used up. The car would be then stopped for no apparent reason, embarrassing the robber and ensuring his speedy apprehension. It was highly unlikely that Mason would activate a switch when leaving his car in the Municipal's drive, quite beyond the bounds of possibility that he said so. He would have forgotten his action so swiftly that he should have opened up the hood after car stopped to look for the cause of apparent breakdown. The viable conclusion in Robinson's sallies seemed to be the car had been tampered with deliberately to force Mason to stop and drive. There he had perfect target. For anybody concealed in the shrubbery. Taking conjunction with the carefully wiped gun, the fact that nobody at the Grange would admit to having fired the shot by mistake. Well, it looked like murder. Not a pleasant thing to happen, Sir John, but there you are. Can't get away from it. And the circumstances that with the Mansfields being well known in the neighborhood and well, one thing or another, I think this is a case for calling the yards, Sir John. Sir Robinson exhaled a great sigh of relief. My own view exactly, Sir John. We simply haven't facilities. Best leave it for the experts. What I mean to Sir John real new was best leave it to the outsider. These people are your friends and mine, especially yours. Exactly, said Sir John. We haven't the facilities. And so for the Henry Tibbet, Chief Inspector of the CID at Scotland Yard, abandoned his plans of the weekend sailing with friends in Sussex to take a room with the Viking in Craigswell instead. His wife Emmy was naturally disappointed, but cheered up a little when she remembered the old school friend of hers is married to a doctor named Thompson, practicing in Craigswell. So Henry booked a double room, if Emmy was allowed to come to the condition she kept well out of the way of her all police activity. They were at the inn just before midnight on Friday night.